Have you ever felt like love came to you too late, when you were already tired, lonely, and almost ready to give up? Today, we explore a story proving late love can still be real, powerful, and worth it. Opening question. Have you ever noticed how silence in your heart feels louder than any noise outside? Picture yourself sitting by the window of a small apartment in Copenhagen, watching bicycles pass by, yet feeling like time has already passed you by. It's a strange ache. You want connection, but your mind whispers, maybe it's too late. That's the cruel trick of the brain. It convinces you that love has an expiration date. Psychology even has a term for it, learned helplessness. When people face repeated disappointments, they start believing nothing will change, even when opportunities appear right in front of them. Your heart becomes like a student who has already failed the exam and refuses to open the book again. But here's the twist. Human emotions don't actually retire. Science shows that oxytocin, the bonding hormone, doesn't care about age, background, or how many heartbreaks you've survived. When two people connect, your nervous system lights up like Tivoli Gardens in December. And suddenly, the thought that love is too late sounds as ridiculous as saying coffee is too warm in Denmark. So here's the question I want you to hold on to. If love arrives late, is it still worth it? This story, told in slow, clear English, will walk you through one ordinary day in Denmark that became extraordinary. You will listen, read, and even speak along, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find your own answer by the end, because sometimes, what feels late, is actually right on time. Lonely routines. Morning in Copenhagen can be beautiful, fresh air, bicycles rushing past, and the smell of bread from the local bakery. But when your heart is empty, even beauty feels like wallpaper, nice to look at, but meaningless. Imagine waking up every day, making the same coffee, staring at the same street, and asking yourself, is this all there is? Our main character lived exactly like that. Wake up at 7. Make coffee. Put on the same gray coat. Cycle to work. Pretend to laugh at small jokes in the office. Return home. Heat leftover food. Scroll endlessly on the phone. Sleep. Repeat. It sounds harmless, even normal. But routine without connection is like a song on repeat that nobody is dancing to. It slowly drives you insane. Psychologists call this emotional numbness. When life feels predictable and relationships are missing, your brain stops rewarding you with dopamine, the motivation chemical. That's why even the small joys, a sunny morning, a friendly smile, feel muted. It's not that they aren't there. It's that your brain has put everything on silent mode. In Denmark, where winters are long and darkness arrives early, loneliness can feel heavier. A 2023 study even showed that many Danes, despite living in one of the happiest countries on earth, reported feeling isolated when they lacked deep connections. Happiness, it seems, isn't just about social systems or beautiful cities. It's about someone waiting for you at the end of the day. So our character cycled home each night through the quiet streets, past cozy cafes where couples laughed together, and wondered, maybe love simply forgot about me. That thought became the soundtrack of life, soft, sad, and almost impossible to turn off, and yet, the universe has a funny way of surprising people exactly when they stop expecting it. Chance meeting. Some of the most important days in life start looking painfully ordinary. It was raining that Tuesday in Copenhagen, not heavy rain, just the kind that makes you want to hide in a cafe until the sky calms down. Our main character, tired after work, stepped into a small cafe near Norrport station, more out of boredom than desire. Inside, the air smelled of cinnamon rolls and strong coffee. People were reading newspapers, typing on laptops, or talking in soft Danish voices. Nothing unusual, until one small accident changed everything. While ordering, our character dropped a coin. It rolled across the wooden floor and stopped near another customer's shoe. The stranger bent down, picked it up, and smiled while handing it back. That smile, simple, unpolished, completely unexpected, felt like the first warm ray of sun after a long winter. No fireworks, no dramatic music, just a human moment that somehow mattered. Science calls this the mere exposure effect. The more you see someone, the more familiar and comfortable they become. But sometimes, even one short encounter can spark a shift, because your brain loves novelty. A new face, a kind gesture, and suddenly, the gray world gains a hint of color. They exchanged a few words, awkward, polite, almost too ordinary to remember. But in loneliness, even small talk feels like treasure. The stranger's voice carried a softness, a patience, the kind of tone that makes you lean in just a little closer, and as our character sat down with the coffee, something strange happened. For the first time in months, the mind wasn't busy counting empty hours. Instead, it whispered, "Who was that? Will I see them again?" Sometimes love doesn't knock. It drops a coin on the floor and waits to be noticed. Conversations begin. The next day, the same cafe. Maybe it was coincidence, maybe it was destiny, but the stranger was there again, sitting at the corner table near the window, reading a book. Our character hesitated. Should I say hello? Should I pretend I don't see them? The brain always invents 1,000 excuses to avoid risk, but loneliness has a strange side effect. It makes even shy people braver. So, with a heart pounding louder than the rain outside, our character walked over and said a simple word, hedge. That's Danish for hi. The stranger looked up, smiled again, and answered, hedge. It sounds ridiculously small, doesn't it? But language learners know, one word can feel like climbing a mountain. And here, in this tiny cafe, one word was enough to open a door. Soon, they started talking about the book, the coffee, even the weather, classic small talk. But small talk, when you've been starved of connection, tastes like a feast. Psychology has a theory called active constructive responding. When someone reacts with genuine interest, your brain releases dopamine, making you want to continue the conversation. That's exactly what happened. The stranger didn't just answer, they leaned forward, asked questions, and laughed at the small jokes. It was conversation in slow motion, but it flowed like music. Minutes became an hour. An hour felt like 5 minutes. For the first time in a long while, our character forgot to check the phone, forgot to check the clock, forgot to feel lonely. Isn't it amazing how words, just words, can change the weight of a whole day. When they finally left the cafe, both carried something invisible but real, a spark. Not love yet, not a promise, just the fragile beginning of something worth hoping for, because sometimes, the most powerful sentences don't start with, "I love you." They start with, "hedge." Fear of time. Falling into conversation was easy. But falling into trust? That was harder. After all, our character wasn't young anymore. There were lines on the face, memories of heartbreak stored like old files on a dusty computer, and a constant whisper inside, "Isn't this too late?" It's funny, time can feel like an enemy when you measure it wrong. Instead of seeing years as experience, many of us see them as proof that opportunities have passed. Psychologists call this negativity bias. Your brain holds on to every failed attempt at love, every rejection, every silence after a message, and says, "See? It will happen again." One evening, walking home after meeting the stranger, our character felt the weight of this fear. Copenhagen's streets were glowing with warm yellow lights, bicycles ringing their bells, couples holding hands. Instead of feeling hopeful, the thought came like cold rain. What if I'm just too late for this? What if I'm only fooling myself? I'm only fooling myself? Here's the science twist. The brain hates uncertainty more than it hates pain. That's why the thought of starting love late feels terrifying. It's unpredictable. But research shows that even later in life relationships increase life satisfaction, lower stress hormones, and can literally extend lifespan. Love isn't about age, it's about presence. Still, fear doesn't disappear just because science says so. Our character wrestled with it every night. Sometimes the fear screamed, sometimes it whispered, but it was always there, sitting like a shadow at the dinner table, and yet, despite the fear, the meetings at the cafe continued. The conversations grew longer. The laughter came easier. Fear and hope were now fighting inside the same heart, because the truth is simple: you can be scared and still fall in love. In fact, that's often how it works. Small moments. Love rarely arrives with fireworks. More often, it tiptoes in quietly, hidden inside small, almost invisible details. For our character, it wasn't grand declarations or romantic gestures. It was the stranger remembering how they liked their coffee, with just a little extra milk. It was the way they slowed down their speech, making sure every word was clear, like offering time itself as a gift. One Saturday afternoon, they walked together through King's Garden, where the autumn leaves painted the ground gold and red. They didn't need deep conversation. Sometimes silence was enough. Just walking side by side, breathing the same crisp air, felt like proof that loneliness wasn't permanent. Psychologists say happiness is not found in big life events, but in micro moments of connection. A smile, a shared laugh, a hand brushing against yours. All these tiny signals activate the vagus nerve, calming the body, lowering stress, and making the heart feel safe. Small moments, repeated often, become the architecture of trust. There was one evening, simple but unforgettable. They sat in the cafe, rain dripping softly against the glass, sharing one slice of cake. Our character laughed so hard at a silly joke that coffee almost spilled out of their nose. The stranger laughed too, not at the joke, but at the joy of seeing someone else laugh. That's when it hit. This wasn't just company. This was connection. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud, but it was real. And real is what the heart had been starving for. Sometimes, it's not the grand gestures that save us. It's the small ones, repeated until they become love. Decision to try. At some point, waiting becomes heavier than risking. That's exactly where our character found themselves. Weeks of coffee, long walks, and laughter had built something undeniable. But fear was still there, whispering, "What if this is only temporary? What if you get hurt again?" One cold evening by the Copenhagen lakes, they stopped walking. The streetlights reflected on the water like broken stars. With a deep breath, our character finally said it, slowly, carefully, as if each word carried weight. "I'm afraid it's too late for me to start again, but I don't want to let this go." The stranger didn't rush to answer. They simply placed a hand gently on theirs, holding it steady against the chill. And then, in a voice soft but certain, "Late is better than never. And maybe late is exactly right." That moment wasn't cinematic. No orchestra played. But it was stronger than any grand scene. Because what truly matters in love isn't perfection, it's the choice to try. To risk vulnerability. To admit fear but move forward anyway. Science agrees. Research shows that couples who make active decisions to pursue the relationship, even with doubts, develop deeper bonds than those who wait endlessly for the perfect moment. Love isn't found, it's built, brick by brick, choice by choice. So they decided, right there under the dim streetlights, to try. Not to promise forever, not to erase the past, but to step into tomorrow together, because sometimes courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being scared, and still holding on. Closing reflection. Looking back, it's almost funny how everything began, with a coin rolling across a cafe floor. Nothing dramatic, nothing planned, just two lonely hearts colliding by accident. Yet from that moment, life started to feel less like survival and more like living. The truth is, love doesn't follow a schedule. It doesn't care about your age, your past mistakes, or the scars you carry. Love arrives when it wants, sometimes later than you hoped, sometimes after you've already given up. But late love is still love. It still warms your hands in winter, still gives you someone to laugh with at silly jokes, still whispers, "You are not alone." Psychologists say that hope is a form of resilience. Even when we think time has closed the door, the human heart finds a way to knock again. And late love often carries a strange beauty. It's calmer, deeper, less about proving something and more about simply being together. So, is love that comes too late still worth it? Absolutely. Because it's not about when it arrives. It's about how it changes you once it does. Maybe you're listening to this story today because part of you wonders if it's too late for you, too. If that's true, let this be your reminder. As long as your heart still beats, it's never too late. That's the real secret of love. It doesn't care about the clock. It only cares about connection. Late love teaches us one truth: timing doesn't define worth. What matters is connection, courage, and presence. If your heart still beats, it's never too late. Hold on, your story might begin today.